Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about Chainlink, some of its recent fundamental developments, and a new interesting analysis that I think helps to compare different crypto assets against each other. So for example, Link against a number of others. Before I go ahead and get into that, I want to go ahead and set the stage a little bit, set some context from a more fundamental developments perspective. So something I think anyone who's been following Chainlink is probably aware of is their cross-chain interoperability protocol that they are developing, which will enable basically interoperability across blockchains. And this would be, to a greater degree than projects like Polkadot or Cosmos Atom, which have some interoperability, but it's limited to kind of things that are within their ecosystems, within those protocols. This would be a much more far-reaching system that allow interoperability much more generally than those kind of more limited systems. And so people see this as being a really bullish development, that this could unlock a massive amount of value. This could be an incredibly valuable piece of infrastructure for not just the crypto space, but also connecting the crypto space to the outside world or outside institutions. And it has a lot of people excited. And one of the things that came out recently that kind of brought this excitement even up to a next level was the news that SWIFT, which is kind of the international communication system between banks, international communication and settlement system, they basically announced that they are doing experiments with Chainlink to basically test if they can start building up interoperability between banks. So they're going to be cooperating with a bunch of different institutions, basically allowing for communication between traditional finance systems and blockchains, or to be able to transfer digitalized digital tokens, tokenized securities, anything like that, from one blockchain to the other. And the idea would be that Link, being the partner here, that if this kind of thing works and if it gets moved further and developed more substantially, Chainlink might be kind of that central aspect, something that's really sitting in the middle of all that, which, as you can imagine, these are trillions of dollars we're talking about that could potentially be involved here, could be a massive value driver. So certainly something that is bullish from a fundamental perspective. And then another thing that happened that's also relevant to Link on a slightly different note is that the SEC had came out with suits against both Binance and Coinbase. And in those suits, the SEC had named a bunch of different specific crypto tokens or coins as being securities, at least in their eyes. And one of the things that was notable was that Link was left out. And so this is kind of less of a direct bullish kind of fundamental factor, but I did just want to mention it because it is, in the sense that Link was omitted from those lists, it is bullish for Link in the sense that it's not, at least yet, going to have to deal with all that regulatory difficulty that those other projects might now start to face that were named securities by the SEC. And so kind of both of those things were things that people who follow Link had picked up on in recent days and had gotten people to get quite excited. But of course, even with those bullish developments happening, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily bullish for price in the immediate term. We can see that Link is actually down considerably since the Binance suit came out at the beginning of the week. But when people think about this from the long term, I think what's tempting for people to do often is they say, okay, Link has great fundamentals, fantastic fundamentals, which should get it to potentially back to its all-time high, no problem. That's what a lot of people think, is that if Link was able to get there in the past, and people think this way with a bunch of different assets, not just Link, that if Link's price was able to get up to, in this case, $52 in the past, then it shouldn't be very difficult for it to get back up there again, or no more difficult at the very least than it was the first time. And so basically Link did it once, should be just as easy to do it again. But a problem with that kind of thinking that this upside target of $52 is just the logical one, the place to be, to think that has to be where Link will go without any problem, is that it forgets one important side of all of this, which is supply dynamics. How many Link exist? How many Link are in the circulating supply? And will that actually be different in a way that might make it harder for Link to reach this level? So another way that we can actually think about this instead of price, which in some ways it might be the more useful way of thinking about it, is thinking in terms of market cap. And market cap is defined by multiplying price by the circulating supply. And so when we look at that, they look similar, right? The charts between price and market cap look quite similar, but they're notably different in that market cap is taking into account circulating supply. And so when we look at the all-time high market cap for Link, that was about $22.2 billion, and now we're sitting down at around $3.0708 billion. And what's important here is that if we're thinking then about, okay, how likely is it for Link, or how easy is it going to be for Link to get back up to its all-time high price, $52, we have to remember that the circulating supply has been changing. And so it turns out that since we know the market cap and since we know price, we can calculate a proxy for circulating supply by just dividing price from market cap. So market cap divided by price is going to give us this proxy for circulating supply. And one of the things that you'll note is that, and again, this is not a perfect readout of this, but generally speaking, you'll note that supply has been increasing. The circulating supply of Link has been increasing. And what that's likely to mean is that for Link to get back up to his all-time high price, it's probably going to need to have a higher market cap than it did before or in the past, since the supply is now larger. There's going to need to be, basically, for Link to get up to this price, its market cap will have to be bigger as well because we have a larger circulating supply. So that's what this analysis is that I want to talk about. We're going to break this down one step at a time and really get at how this is useful to think about these different assets against each other, because it gives us a sense of how circulating supply dynamics have changed relative to those all-time high prices. So here what I've done is I've just listed off a bunch of different assets. So Link sits in the middle here. We also have Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, etc. What I've done is I first grabbed the all-time high close prices. So this is the daily close, not the top of Wix. And also the all-time high close market cap values, the daily close value there. And what you can see is that, there's an all-time high price for each of those. So again, for Link, it's about $52. Its all-time high market cap, 22.4 billion, like we were just talking about before. But now let's take things a step further. So we know that these are the all-time high values. But then what we can also calculate is say, okay, so this was the all-time high market cap value for basically for the asset at the time when it has all-time high. But now let's say, what happens if we had this market cap today? So basically at the current value of circulating supply for all these different assets, like we were just looking at, if that asset hit this current market cap today, so let's just say that suddenly Link had its market cap from before, that today it suddenly had a market cap again of 22.4 billion instead of 3.07 that we're just talking about. What would its price then be if that happened? And what you'll notice, and this is across the board, is that the price is lower than the all-time high price for Link. So basically, if Link suddenly shot up to another market cap of $22.04 billion today, its price would actually be lower than its all-time high price back in spring of 2021. And the reason, like we were just talking about, is that the circulating supply is now higher. And because there's a higher circulating supply, that means you'll get to the same market cap at a lower price. Basically, that's that dilution idea happening. And because there's more circulating supply, once you get to that same market cap that you had the prior all-time high, that'll actually correspond to a lower price. And so when we're thinking about that upside target, a lot of people just assume that 52, that if we get to this prior market cap, we'll get to this prior price. That's not true. If we get to this prior all-time high market cap, we're actually going to be at a lower price. And that's not just the case for Link. For Ethereum, same thing. Bitcoin, same thing. XRP, same thing, all the way down. But importantly, what this allows us to do is look at, across these assets, how big is that difference? So basically, relative to the all-time high price, how much of a drop down do we have to this, what I'm calling the all-time high market cap price if it happened today? So if we had this all-time high market cap today at the current circulating supply, what would the price be? And we can calculate what I'm calling the all-time high price proportion. And that's basically just taking this value, it's taking this value and dividing this value from it. So this value divided by this value. And so we can see for Ethereum, for example, that if it got to its prior all-time high market cap today, its price would be 99% of what it was at its actual all-time high price. Bitcoin 98%, XRP 92%, so on and so forth. And you see that Link sits right in the middle of these assets that I have here at about 81%. So basically, Link's price would get to 81% of its actual all-time high price if its market cap reached its all-time high. So basically, if Link reclaimed a market cap of 22.04 billion, its all-time high price, or its price would be 81% of what its actual all-time high price would be. And so really what this metric allows us to do, this all-time high proportion, is it allows us to compare different assets against each other and then understand how much the supply dynamics have changed over time relative to when that all-time high price happened. So for all of these, and you'll notice there was something like sand or near, it's a lot worse of an outlook. So for sand, its all-time high price was $7.51, but if it got back to its all-time high market cap of $6.8 billion, it would only be sitting at a price of $3.67, less than half of the value of last time it was at that market cap. And really what that means is under the hood, sand has seen a lot of inflation since then. There's been a lot of new sand that's been created, which means it's harder for sand to get back up to its all-time high price. It'll need to have a higher market cap to be able to reclaim that higher all-time high price. And we can actually go ahead and just calculate what is the market cap that would be necessary for each of these assets to reclaim their all-time high price, their actual all-time high price. So for Link, we see that sitting up at $27.06 billion. For Sand, it's more than double its prior all-time high. For Near, it would have to get up to, instead of $12.46 billion, to be $18.49 billion. And so the reason I think this is useful is just lets us evaluate how the dynamics have changed for a given asset relative to before, and then set our expectations of what kind of market cap might be needed for these assets to just get back to their all-time high, much less exceed it. And so for Link, really to be able to put that $52 back in our sights, we'd have to be thinking that a market cap of $27.06 billion is within reach. And that's, again, today. That's not taking into account future Link that'll come into existence that would actually make that value be higher. Now, of course, the reason I wanted to set the stage here in the context of some of those fundamental developments is that it's not to say this is impossible, right? With something like Link, if it were to be the case that Link is able to realize all of that potential that is there with these experiments, and if it ends up securing massive amounts of value in the space, in both in crypto, but then also, in these interactions between crypto and more traditional institutions, then a market cap of $27.6 billion might just be peanuts in the long run. It could go way higher than that in a very probable way, in a very rational way, not kind of just based on speculation and hype, but actually based on its fundamental value of securing that much value. So that's certainly not to say it's impossible, but it is important that we keep our expectations within kind of reason, and we understand that the dynamics are different between now and what they were back in the spring of 2021. And so it also then allows us to do these comparisons where we can say that relative to some of these other assets, we can understand how much larger a market cap we'd expect just for price to get back up to that all-time high. This is also important for people who might be holding bags from up in these areas. As someone who bought sand at up around $7, to understand that for a price to get back up to $7, not only would sand have to get to its all-time high market cap, it would actually have to a little bit more than double that just to get back up to around the prices that one would have bought it in at the beginning. I think a lot of people buy an asset and they say, well, I'll just wait for a price to eventually get back up to where I bought it, and then I'll sell it then. But it's important to understand how difficult it might be for price to be able to do that. Because if it's unrealistic to really think that a price will ever get back up to that all-time high price, or if the market cap that would be required is just too high to be within reason, then it starts calling into question that strategy, because you're just never going to sell it. You might just ride it down even further. So obviously none of this is financial advice. You should make of these data as you will, so on and so forth. But I think this is a useful metric just from those reasons, just to think that, just because it got to that price before doesn't mean it'll be equally easy for it to get to there again. And for different assets, it'll be more or less difficult than before. So basically, assuming that prior all-time high market caps are attainable again, this is basically giving you an idea of how close price would be to that prior all-time high price. And for some of these assets, it's really not that much of a difference, like Ethereum or Bitcoin. There's not a whole lot of inflation, relatively speaking, with those assets. And so it's a relatively reasonable thing to think that if all-time high market cap can get back to these levels, you'll basically get to the same prices. Much less of a safe assumption when you get down to the further lower end of this table here. Okay, so that kind of wraps it up. So really what I wanted to talk about here was that I do think there are some really exciting fundamental developments happening with Link. And so that analysis I was just showing you, I don't think that is to say that Link can't achieve those higher market caps to get back up to its prior all-time high price or potentially higher. But it is important to keep in mind that the dynamics have changed and that it won't be quite as easy for Link to get up there this time as it was before. It will require a larger market cap to get back up there this next time around, whenever the next bull run would come, than was the case the first time. All right, if you like the content or subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and follow us on Twitter. A lot of updates or indicators and more over there. And I also want to just iterate or mention again that over on our website, polaritydigital.io, we're actually going to be launching Polarity Digital Pro. It's our subscription service that's coming out on the 13th of June, so just under a week as I'm recording this. What that's going to do is give you full access to not just the models that currently exist there for assets like Link. I've shown you here a risk model, for example, for Link, which identifies high risk levels and low risk levels. It's done a fantastic job with Link in its past. But I'll also have some new models. Our forecast model that's able to predict the probability that the price of an asset will be up or down 6 months in the future, and several others. We put out an announcement video. I'll link to that in the description as well, and I'll also leave a link to polaritydigital.io. It'll be free to access all of this until Polarity Digital Pro launches, and then once that launches, the models that we have here, in addition to those new ones, will become available on the site for Pro subscribers.